The massive doors of the Galactic Council chambers slid open with a deep hum. Ambassador Hyun-woo walked through them, his black diplomatic uniform sharp against the alien architecture of Nexus Prime Station. His footsteps echoed on the crystal floor as hundreds of alien eyes turned to watch him. The council chamber was huge, bigger than any building on Earth. Representatives from dozens of species sat in curved rows that stretched up toward a domed ceiling filled with stars. Some aliens breathed different gases and sat in special tanks. Others floated in energy fields or hung from the ceiling like strange bats. Hyun-woo had been to this place many times, but today felt different. Today the air itself seemed heavy with fear. Elder Mirai sat in the human section, her gray hair tied back in a simple bun. She was the only human allowed a permanent seat on the council. Her eyes met Hyun-woo's for a moment, and he saw worry there. Real worry. At the center of the chamber, Speaker Veltara rose from her seat. The Zealothan was tall and thin, with blue skin that seemed to glow under the chamber lights. Her forearms moved gracefully as she spoke. "The council recognizes Ambassador Hyun-woo of the Terran Federation," she said in the universal language that all species used here. Hyun-woo stepped forward to the speaking platform. Around him, the alien representatives whispered to each other in their strange languages. He could feel their distrust. Humans had been part of the galactic community for only 50 years, and many aliens still saw them as dangerous barbarians. "Honorable Speaker, fellow representatives," Hyun-woo began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "I come before you today with urgent news. The Vorthak Empire has begun moving their fleets toward the Kalari homeworld of Sanctuary." A wave of concerned sounds filled the chamber. The Kalari were loved by almost everyone in the galaxy. They were peaceful crystal beings who had never hurt anyone. They made beautiful music with their bodies and shared it freely with all who asked. "The Terran Federation offers our military assistance to defend Sanctuary and its people," Hyun-woo continued. The chamber erupted. Aliens shouted in dozens of languages. Some pounded their tables or waved their tentacles angrily. Others made sounds that humans could not even understand. Speaker Veltara raised all forearms for silence. "Ambassador Hyun-woo, surely you remember the human containment protocols. These were put in place for the safety of all galactic citizens." Elder Mirai stood up in the human section. "Speaker, with respect, the protocols were designed to prevent human aggression, not to stop us from defending innocent people." A large alien with gray skin and metal implants laughed harshly. "Humans always find excuses for violence. This is exactly why we need the protocols." This was Morgeth, a military advisor from the Zealothan forces. He had fought against human pirates in the early days and never trusted Earth's people. "The Kalari cannot defend themselves," Hyun-woo said firmly. "Their entire culture is built around peace and harmony. They do not even have weapons." A shimmering energy being spoke from its containment field. "Perhaps diplomacy can solve this problem. The Vorthak are reasonable beings. Surely we can negotiate." Hyun-woo felt frustration building inside him. He had seen the reports from the other worlds the Vorthak had conquered. There was no negotiating with them. 7 worlds have already fallen, he said. The Vorthak do not negotiate. They conquer and convert. They turn living beings into cybernetic slaves. "Alleged conversions," corrected Counselor Quindal, an Althorian with pale green skin and large black eyes. "We have no proof of these claims." Elder Mirai stepped forward. "I have seen the intelligence reports. The survivors from the Hassani system describe horrible experiments. The Vorthak are combining organic life with their machines, creating hybrid soldiers." Speaker Veltara's blue skin grew darker, a sign of deep thought among her people. "Even if this is true, the human containment protocols exist for good reason. Humans have a history of excessive violence. Your own planet's records show centuries of brutal warfare." Hyun-woo felt the familiar weight of human history on his shoulders. Every human in the galaxy carried this burden. Yes, Earth had known war. Yes, humans had fought terrible battles against each other, but they had also learned to be better. "We fight only when we must," he said quietly, "and we fight to protect those who cannot protect themselves." "Like you protected the Meridian pirates?" Morgeth asked with a sneer. "When your warships turned 3 pirate bases into space dust." "Those pirates were attacking civilian ships," Elder Mirai replied hotly. "Human ships saved thousands of lives. By killing hundreds," Morgeth shot back. The argument continued, but Hyun-woo could see it was hopeless. The council was too afraid of human violence to allow them to help. even when that violence was the only thing that could save innocent lives. Meanwhile, thousands of light years away, Captain Deho stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable. The heavy cruiser was part of the Terran patrol fleet, assigned to guard the human colonies near the galactic rim. It was boring work, far from the action at the galactic core. A communication alert chimed, and Lieutenant Wu Jin looked up from his station. "Captain, we're receiving a priority message from Dr. Yunji on Sanctuary." Deho frowned. Dr. Yunji was a xenobiologist studying Kalari culture. She had been on Sanctuary for 2 years, learning their unique language of harmonic frequencies. "Put it through," Deho ordered. Dr. Yunji's face appeared on the main screen. She was young, maybe 30, with short black hair and intelligent eyes. But now those eyes were filled with fear. "Captain Deho, thank goodness I reached you. The situation here is desperate. Long-range sensors have detected a massive Vorthak fleet approaching the system. They'll be here in less than 3 days. What does the Council say?" Deho asked. "They're still debating. The Kalari have sent their own representative to plead for help, but you know how these things go. By the time they make a decision, Sanctuary will be gone." Deho's jaw tightened.
He had read the reports from the conquered worlds.
The Vorthak did not just kill their enemies, they turned them into something worse than dead. "The Kalari are trying to evacuate their children to the crystal caves deep underground," Dr. Yunji continued. "But they're so peaceful, Captain. They don't understand what's coming. They keep trying to send musical messages to the Vorthak fleet, hoping to communicate." The bridge crew exchanged glances. Everyone knew about Kalari music. It was the most beautiful sound in the galaxy, capable of bringing tears to the eyes of any species that heard it. But the Vorthak had no appreciation for beauty. They saw only resources to be harvested and flesh to be converted. "Dr. Yunji, are you safe?" Deho asked. "For now. But Captain, if the Council won't act, these people will die. Or worse, they'll become part of the Vorthak collective. You should see them, sir. They're like living crystals. And when they sing together, they create patterns of light that are almost magical. The galaxy will lose something beautiful forever." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Deho stared at the blank screen, his mind racing. The human containment protocols were clear. No human military action without Council approval. But Dr. Yunji was right. By the time the Council acted, it would be too late. "Sir?" Lieutenant Wu Jin asked quietly. "What are your orders?" Before Deho could answer, another alert chimed. This time it was Admiral Boram calling from Fleet Headquarters. "Captain, I know you received Dr. Yunji's message. I'm calling all ship commanders for an urgent meeting. We have a situation." Deho nodded. "Understood, Admiral. I'll be there." As the communication ended, Deho looked around his bridge crew. These were good people, humans who had joined the fleet to protect others. He could see the same frustration in their eyes that he felt in his heart. The galaxy was about to lose something precious, and the very people who could save it were forbidden to act. But Admiral Boram was smart, and she cared about justice as much as any human alive. If anyone could find a way around the protocols, it would be her. "Helm, set course for Fleet Headquarters," Deho ordered. "Best speed." "Aye, sir," came the reply. As the Indomitable turned toward the human fleet base, Deho thought about the Kalari and their crystal songs. In 72 hours, those songs might fall silent forever, unless the humans found a way to break their chains and do what they did best: fight for those who could not fight for themselves. Admiral Boram's office was filled with holographic displays showing ship positions across human space. The walls were covered with pictures of Earth, reminding everyone who entered what they were fighting to protect. But today, the Admiral was thinking about beings who lived on a world of crystal and song, far from the blue skies of home. Captain Deho entered with 3 other ship commanders. Commander Taemin from the stealth frigate Ghost Runner, Captain Youngsu from the destroyer Defiant, and Captain Jae Won from the scout ship Pathfinder. All of them had the same grim expression. "Gentlemen," Admiral Boram said, not bothering with formal greetings, "I assume you've all seen the intelligence reports from Sanctuary." They nodded. The reports made sick reading. The Vorthak had given the Kalari 72 hours to surrender. After that, they would begin what they called forced integration. Every living Kalari would be captured and connected to cybernetic implants, their consciousness absorbed into the Vorthak collective mind. The Council has officially ordered all human forces to maintain current positions. The Admiral continued. "We are not to interfere with Vorthak operations. Captain Youngsu's face darkened. Admiral, with respect, that's insane. The Kalari will be slaughtered. Not slaughtered, Captain. Something worse. They'll be turned into living machines, their minds trapped forever in cybernetic prison. Commander Taemin leaned forward. What about our people on Sanctuary? Dr. Yoonji and the research team? Officially, they're on their own. The Council won't authorize a rescue mission. Admiral Boram paused.
However, I've been studying the human containment protocols very carefully.
There are some interesting details in the fine print. She activated a holographic display showing the legal document that restricted human military action. Lines of text scrolled past in the formal language of galactic law. The protocols forbid official military action by the Terran Federation without Council approval, she explained. But they say nothing about individual ship commanders who might experience technical difficulties. The captains exchanged glances. They all understood what the Admiral was suggesting. What kind of technical difficulties? Captain Daeho asked carefully. Navigation errors, communication failures, ships drifting out of their patrol zones due to engine problems. Admiral Boram's smile was cold as space. Amazing how these old ships sometimes develop mysterious malfunctions. Captain Jaewon grinned. My ship's navigation computer has been acting up lately. Might accidentally plot a course to the wrong system. Mine too, Captain Youngsu added. In fact, I think several ships in the fleet might need to drift in the direction of Sanctuary for emergency repairs. Admiral Boram nodded. I'm authorizing extended shore leave for any crew members who want it. Amazing how many might choose to spend their leave time as independent contractors, working for private security companies. This was the loophole. The protocols restricted official military action. But they said nothing about humans acting as private citizens. It was thin legal protection, but it might be enough. What about weapons and supplies? Commander Taemin asked. The fleet has a lot of surplus equipment. Old rifles that need to be disposed of. Outdated armor that's being replaced. Ammunition that's past its expiration date but still perfectly good. The Admiral's voice was completely serious, but her eyes twinkled with mischief. It would be wasteful to just throw it all away. Meanwhile, Dr. Yoonji was in her laboratory on Sanctuary, working frantically to understand Vorthak technology. She had managed to get her hands on wreckage from a previous battle, and what she found made her stomach turn. The Vorthak cybernetics were designed to interface directly with organic nervous systems, but they didn't just control their victims. They fed on their life force using biological energy to power their machines. The converted beings were literally being eaten alive from the inside, kept conscious so their suffering could fuel Vorthak technology. Her computer chimed with an incoming message. It was from Engineer So Young aboard the research vessel Endeavour, orbiting Sanctuary. Dr. Yoonji, I've been analyzing the electromagnetic patterns from Vorthak ships. I think I found something important. What is it? Yoonji asked. Their cybernetic implants operate on very specific frequencies. If we could generate the right kind of electromagnetic pulse, we might be able to disrupt their control systems. Yoonji's eyes widened. That's brilliant. The Kalari communicate through harmonic frequencies. Their crystal bodies are natural resonators. If we could tune them to the right frequency, exactly, we could turn every Kalari on the planet into a living weapon against Vorthak technology. It was a desperate plan, but it might work. The Kalari were connected to their planet through vast crystal networks that ran deep underground. If they could synchronize the entire population to broadcast on the right frequency, they could create an electromagnetic field powerful enough to disrupt Vorthak cybernetics. But first, they had to survive long enough to try it. On the edge of Sanctuary's system, the first human ships began to arrive. They came in small groups, their transponders identifying them as independent traders or private security vessels. Officially, they had nothing to do with the Terran Federation. Lieutenant Wu Jin had resigned from the fleet that morning and immediately signed a contract with Hyperion Security Solutions, a company that Admiral Boram had created just hours earlier. His new uniform looked exactly like his old one, except for the company patch instead of Terran fleet insignia. Captain Daeho's ship had suffered a navigation malfunction that left it drifting near Sanctuary. His crew had volunteered for emergency shore leave and somehow ended up as contracted security personnel. Their ship's weapons were disabled, but coincidentally, Hyperion Security had provided them with identical replacement systems. The Kalari watched the human ships arrive with a mixture of hope and confusion. They had tried to communicate with the Vorthak fleet using their musical language, broadcasting beautiful songs across space. The Vorthak had responded by transmitting images of conquered worlds and the cybernetic horrors they had created. Harmonist. Shimara was one of the few Kalari who had learned to speak in words instead of music. She met with Dr. Yunji in the crystal caves where the Kalari children were hiding. "Your people came," she said in her strange singing voice, "even though your leaders forbade it." "Humans don't abandon friends," Dr. Yunji replied. "We might not always follow orders, but we keep our promises." Shimara's crystal body glowed brighter, which was how Kalari showed emotion. "We do not understand your ways of violence, but we see that you use your strength to protect the weak. This is beautiful to us." Around them, young Kalari hummed softly to themselves, creating patterns of light in the crystal walls. They were afraid, but trying to be brave. Dr. Yunji felt a surge of anger at the thought of these innocent beings being turned into cybernetic slaves. "We're going to need your help," she told Shimara. "Can you teach your people to sing on a specific frequency? All of them at the same time?" "Yes, we are all connected through the crystal network. One song can become the song of our entire world." Shimara paused. "But why?" Dr. Yunji explained the plan. The Kalari would use their natural abilities to create an electromagnetic weapon that could disrupt Vorthak technology. It had never been tried before, and there was no guarantee it would work. "We understand," Shimara said finally. "You would fight with weapons of metal and fire. We will fight with songs of crystal and light." Above the planet, more human ships continued to arrive. Commander Taemin's stealth frigate had accidentally wandered into the system while testing new cloaking technology. Captain Youngsu's destroyer had suffered an engine failure that left it unable to return to its patrol route. The Vorthak fleet was still 2 days away, but already their long-range sensors were detecting the human presence. War Prime Nexus 7, the Vorthak commander, was puzzled by this development. According to their intelligence, humans were restricted by their own laws from interfering. But War Prime Nexus 7 was about to learn something important about human nature. Laws and protocols meant nothing when innocent lives were at stake. Humans had a saying, "Better to ask forgiveness than permission." They were about to demonstrate what that meant. Dr. Yunji worked through the night, calibrating the frequency generators while Engineer So-Young coordinated with the human ships. They had maybe 48 hours before the Vorthak arrived. It wasn't much time to organize a defense using an untested alien weapon and a handful of rogue human vessels. But they were going to try. Because that's what humans did when faced with impossible odds and innocent lives at stake. They found a way to fight, even if it meant breaking every rule in the book. The crystal caves rang with the sound of Kalari voices learning a new kind of song. It wasn't beautiful like their usual music. It was harsh and discordant, designed to hurt rather than heal. But they practiced it anyway because sometimes survival required breaking your own nature, just like the humans who had come to save them. The Vorthak fleet emerged from hyperspace like a dark cloud covering the stars. War Prime Nexus 7 stood on the bridge of the massive dreadnought Dominion, watching Sanctuary grow larger on the main screen. The planet was beautiful, covered in crystal formations that caught and reflected light in amazing patterns. Soon, all that beauty would serve the Vorthak Collective. Report? Nexus 7 ordered in the mechanical voice that all Vorthak used. "Planetary defenses are minimal," reported Subprime Vex 9. "A few orbital platforms with outdated weapons. No significant military presence. What about the human ships? Approximately 30 vessels of various classes. They appear to be independent contractors, not official military forces. Their formation is chaotic." Nexus 7 processed this information through his cybernetic implants. The Vorthak fought with perfect coordination, every ship and soldier connected to the collective mind. They used proven tactics based on millions of calculated variables. Chaos was inefficient. "Begin the assault," he ordered. Captain Daeho watched the Vorthak fleet approach on his tactical display. The enemy ships moved in perfect formation, each one exactly where it should be for maximum effectiveness. It was impressive and terrifying at the same time. "All ships, this is Daeho," he broadcast on the human command frequency. "Remember, we're not trying to win a stand-up fight. We just need to buy time for the Kalari to prepare their surprise." The human fleet was scattered across the system, hiding behind asteroids and moons. Unlike the Vorthak, They had no single commander or unified strategy. Each captain was free to fight as they saw fit, using whatever tactics worked. Commander Taemin's stealth frigate Ghost Runner struck first. It appeared behind a Vorthak cruiser and fired a full spread of torpedoes before vanishing again. The cruiser's shields held, but the surprise attack disrupted the Vorthak formation. Human vessels have initiated combat, Subprime Vex 9 reported. They are not following standard engagement protocols. Nexus 7 watched as the human ships darted in and out of combat like angry wasps. They used hit-and-run tactics, attacking from unexpected angles before retreating to safety. It was frustrating and inefficient. Adapt formation pattern 7 Alpha, he ordered. Surround and destroy them. But the humans refused to cooperate. When the Vorthak ships moved to surround them, they scattered in all directions. When the Vorthak tried to focus fire on individual targets, the humans used the debris field around Sanctuary to break line of sight. Captain Youngsu's destroyer Defiant led 3 Vorthak ships into an asteroid field, then used the rocks as cover while his gunners picked them apart. It was a tactic as old as human warfare. Use the terrain to your advantage. On the planet's surface, Dr. Yunji worked frantically in the crystal caves. She had connected her equipment to the Kalari crystal network, turning the entire planet into a massive resonance chamber. But the calculations were incredibly complex, and she only had one chance to get it right. The frequency has to be exact, she explained to harmonist Shimara. Too high or too low, and it won't affect their cybernetics. We understand, Shimara replied. Our entire world will sing as one voice. Around them, thousands of Kalari were taking positions throughout the crystal cave system. Their bodies glowed with soft light as they prepared to channel all their energy into one devastating song. Meanwhile, Sergeant Minho led a team of human marines through the surface caves, setting up defensive positions. The Vorthak would certainly try to land troops to capture Kalari for immediate conversion. Remember, he told his soldiers, these people have never seen violence before. Our job is to keep them safe so they can do their part. The Marines were volunteers, officially on leave from the Terran fleet. They carried surplus weapons and wore outdated armor, but they were still among the best soldiers in human space. Above them, the space battle continued. Pilot Nayun led a squadron of fighters in a desperate dance with Vorthak interceptors. Her ship spun and twisted through space, following no pattern that Vorthak computers could predict. This is Falcon Leader, she called over the radio. I'm seeing something weird about their ships. They all move exactly the same way. Confirmed, Captain Deho replied. It's like they're all controlled by one mind. That gave Tactical Officer Hyojin an idea. Captain, if they're all connected, what happens if we disrupt their communications? Let's find out. All ships target their communication arrays. The human ships focus their fire on the antenna clusters that allowed Vorthak ships to communicate with each other. It was a risky strategy because it meant ignoring shields and weapons to hit smaller targets, but it worked. As their communications failed, the Vorthak ships began to move more slowly, less coordinated. They were still dangerous, but they had lost their perfect unity. War Prime Nexus 7 felt the disruption through his implants. Individual ship commanders were requesting orders instead of acting as part of the collective mind. It was inefficient and disturbing. Deploy ground forces, he ordered. Capture the crystal beings for immediate integration. Vorthak landing craft began descending toward Sanctuary's surface. They were filled with cybernetic soldiers, part machine and part flesh from a dozen different species. These were what the Kalari would become if the human plan failed. Sergeant Minho watched the landing craft approach through his rifle scope. Here they come. Remember, protect the civilians. Let the Kalari do their thing. The first Vorthak soldiers to emerge from their craft were met with human weapons fire. Minho's team used guerrilla tactics, hitting hard and then falling back to prepared positions. They couldn't stop the Vorthak advance, but they could slow it down. Engineer So Young coordinated the defense from her ship in orbit. She had linked the human tactical systems with the Kalari crystal network, creating a communication system that the Vorthak couldn't intercept or decode. Dr. Yunji, how much more time do you need? She asked. 5 minutes, maybe 10. The frequency calculations are almost complete. I'll buy you the time, Captain Deho promised. He turned his ship toward the largest Vorthak vessel and ordered full speed ahead. The Indomitable was a heavy cruiser, built for long-range patrol duty. It wasn't designed for ramming attacks. But humans had never been ones to use weapons only for their intended purpose. All hands, brace for impact, Deho announced over the ship's intercom. The Indomitable smashed into the Vorthak cruiser's forward section, tearing through armor plating and causing massive explosions. Both ships spun out of control, locked together in a deadly embrace. On the planet, Vorthak soldiers advanced through the crystal caves, their cybernetic implants scanning for Kalari life signs. They found the first group of crystal beings huddled in a chamber deep underground, but as they raised their weapons, human marines appeared from hidden positions. Sergeant Minho's team fought with the desperate fury of soldiers protecting innocents. They used grenades and automatic weapons, tactics that seemed barbaric to other species but were brutally effective. Fall back to the next position, Minho ordered as more Vorthak soldiers arrived. Keep them away from the main chamber. Dr. Yunji made the final adjustments to her equipment. The frequency generators were locked onto the exact wavelength that would disrupt Vorthak cybernetics. All across the planet, Kalari were in position, ready to sing their weapon song. "This is it," she told Shimara. "Are your people ready?" "We have never used our voices for violence," the Kalari replied. "But we understand that sometimes peace must be defended with force." The signal went out through the crystal network, reaching every Kalari on the planet simultaneously. Thousands of crystal beings began to sing, their voices combining into a single powerful frequency. The sound was nothing like their usual beautiful music. It was harsh and discordant, designed to cause pain rather than joy. The entire planet vibrated with the force of their combined voices, turning Sanctuary into a massive weapon. The effect on the Vorthak was immediate and devastating. Their cybernetic implants began to malfunction, sending feedback loops through their nervous systems. Soldiers collapsed as their artificial parts fought against their organic brains. War Prime Nexus 7 felt the frequency attack through his own implants. Pain shot through his mechanical components as systems began to shut down. Around him, his bridge crew staggered and fell as their cybernetics failed. "Impossible," he gasped through failing voice synthesizers. "They are a peaceful species." But he was learning something that humans had tried to teach the galaxy. Even the most peaceful people will fight when their survival is at stake. The Kalari had found their own way to wage war, using their greatest gift as a weapon. In space, Vorthak ships began to drift as their crews were incapacitated by the frequency attack. The perfect formations fell apart as individual vessels lost coordination. Captain Young-Soo seized the opportunity, leading the remaining human ships in a final assault. They targeted engines and life support systems, not trying to destroy but to disable. The battle was turning, but it wasn't over yet. War Prime Nexus 7 was still functional, his command implants more heavily shielded than those of his subordinates. He activated the emergency protocols, preparing to detonate his ship's core and take the human fleet with him. But humans had one more surprise for him. Engineer So Young had been monitoring Vorthak communications, and she detected the activation sequence. "All ships emergency scatter," she broadcast. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in its 300-year history. Delegates shouted across the chamber in dozens of languages, while holographic displays showed footage from the Battle of Sanctuary. The images were disturbing. Human soldiers fighting with brutal efficiency, Vorthak ships exploding in brilliant flashes, and worst of all, the peaceful Kalari using their voices as weapons. Speaker Veltara called for order, but her voice was lost in the chaos. Finally, she activated the chamber's sound dampening field, forcing silence on the assembled delegates. "The emergency session will come to order," she announced, her blue skin darker than usual with stress. "We are here to discuss the illegal human intervention at Sanctuary and its consequences." Elder Mirai sat in the human section, feeling the weight of hostile stares from all directions. She had been proud when news of the victory reached Nexus Prime. Human courage had saved innocent lives. But now she faced a council that saw only violence and disobedience. Counselor Quinidal from the Althorian delegation stood first. His pale green skin was flushed with anger. "The humans have violated the containment protocols in the most flagrant manner possible. They conducted an unauthorized military operation and corrupted a peaceful species into committing acts of violence." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Elder Mirai felt her heart sink as she saw how many delegates nodded along with Quindal's words. Furthermore, Quindal continued. Their tactics were unnecessarily brutal. I have reviewed the combat footage. Human soldiers used explosive weapons in confined spaces. They showed no concern for minimizing casualties. Elder Mirai stood up. Counselor Quindal, those soldiers were protecting civilians from cybernetic conversion. The Vorthak would have turned every Kalari into a living slave. Alleged conversion, Quindal shot back. We have no proof that Vorthak integration is as harmful as humans claim. The chamber erupted again. Delegates who had never faced real violence debated the ethics of human military action. They spoke of proportional response and diplomatic solutions, while safely protected by the very human forces they criticized. A new voice cut through the argument. Counselor In Sung from the human colonial delegation had requested permission to speak. He was young for a counselor, barely 40, but he represented the human colonies that were scattered across the galaxy's outer rim. Honorable delegates, he began, I have received intelligence reports that I believe you should see. He activated a holographic display showing intercepted Vorthak transmissions. The alien text scrolled past, accompanied by translations in the universal language. These messages were captured from the wreckage at Sanctuary, In Sung explained. They detail Vorthak plans for something called the Great Convergence. Elder Mirai read the translations with growing horror. The Vorthak weren't just expanding their territory. They were planning to upgrade every organic species in the galaxy, starting with the most technologically advanced worlds. According to these documents, In Sung continued, Nexus Prime is target designation Alpha 1. The Vorthak plan to attack this station within the next 30 days. The chamber fell silent. For the first time, the delegates realized that they weren't safe in their council chambers. The Vorthak threat was coming for them personally. Speaker Veltara studied the documents on her personal display. Are these transmissions verified? Intelligence analyst Ki Young has confirmed their authenticity, In Sung replied. Ki Young was a slight woman with intense eyes who worked for Terran intelligence. She rarely spoke in council sessions, preferring to work behind the scenes. But now she stepped forward with data tablets full of evidence. The Vorthak have been studying us for years, she reported. Every diplomatic contact, every trade negotiation, every cultural exchange now, they were gathering biological samples and psychological profiles. She activated another display showing Vorthak research files. Each species in the galaxy had its own folder, complete with detailed plans for integration. The files were clinical and cold, describing living beings as nothing more than resources to be harvested. They're particularly interested in species with unique abilities, Ki Young continued. The Kalari's harmonic resonance, the Althorians' telepathic capabilities, the Zelethans' enhanced physical coordination. Counselor Quindal's pale skin grew even whiter. What about humans? Ki Young's expression was grim. According to their files, humans are designated as prime integration candidates due to our adaptability and aggressive tendencies. They want to use human neural patterns to improve their military efficiency. The implications hit the chamber like a physical blow. The very traits that made other species fear humans were exactly what the Vorthak wanted to steal. Human violence, human unpredictability, human refusal to give up. All of it would be turned against the galaxy. Dr. Yunji appeared via holographic projection from Sanctuary. She looked tired but determined as she addressed the council. Honorable delegates, I've been studying Vorthak technology for the past week. What we found is worse than we imagined. She displayed images from the captured Vorthak soldiers. Their cybernetic implants were far more advanced than anyone had realized. But the real horror was in the organic components. The Vorthak don't just control their converts, Dr. Yunji explained. They consume them. The biological parts provide energy and processing power for the cybernetic systems. The converted beings are conscious throughout the process, experiencing constant pain as their life force is slowly drained. Several delegates turned away from the images. Even the most hardened military advisors looked sick. We found tissue samples from 17 different species in a single Vorthak soldier, Dr. Yunji continued. Some of the genetic material was hundreds of years old. These people have been trapped in cybernetic hell for generations. Morgeth, the Zelethan military advisor, finally spoke. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by obvious fear. What are our defensive capabilities against this threat? Minimal, Dr. Yunji replied bluntly. Standard energy weapons have little effect on Vorthak armor. Their shields adapt to whatever frequency you use. The only thing that stopped them at Sanctuary was the Kalari frequency weapon, and that only worked because we caught them by surprise. What about our combined fleets? Asked another delegate. The Vorthak have the tactical data from Sanctuary, Ki Young answered. They've studied human combat techniques and alien defensive systems. When they come back, they'll be prepared for everything we used against them. The chamber fell into troubled silence. For decades, the various species had relied on diplomacy and economic pressure to solve their problems. Real military conflict was something that happened to other people, in distant parts of the galaxy. Now they faced an enemy that couldn't be negotiated with, couldn't be bribed or reasoned with. The Vorthak wanted to turn every living being in the galaxy into cybernetic slaves, and they had the technology to do it. Elder Mirai stood again. Honorable delegates, the humans have been preparing for threats like this our entire history. We know how to fight wars against superior technology. We know how to win when victory seems impossible. At what cost? Counselor Quindal demanded. Your species will turn the galaxy into a battlefield. Billions will die in the crossfire. Billions will die anyway if we do nothing, Mirai replied firmly. But if we fight, at least some will live free. Captain Deho joined the transmission from his medical bay. His ship had been badly damaged in the ramming attack and he was covered in bandages, but his voice was strong as he addressed the council. Delegates, I've fought the Vorthak face to face. I've seen what they do to their prisoners. Death would be a mercy compared to what they're planning. He paused, looking directly at the camera. The human containment protocols were designed to prevent us from starting wars. But this war is already here. The question is whether you'll let us help you fight it, or watch from the sidelines while the galaxy burns. Morgoth shifted uncomfortably in his seat.
Captain, even if we authorize human military action, can you actually defeat the Vorthak?
Your victory at Sanctuary was against a single fleet. They have thousands of ships. We can't promise victory, Captain Deho admitted, but we can promise that we'll never stop fighting. Humans don't surrender. We don't give up. We'll fight until there's nothing left to fight with. The debate continued for hours. Delegates argued about military authorization, resource allocation, and casualty projections. But underneath all the political maneuvering was a simple fear. They were all going to die unless someone stopped the Vorthak. Finally, Speaker Veltara called for a preliminary vote. The question before us is whether to suspend the human containment protocols in the face of the Vorthak threat. All in favor? The vote was closer than Elder Mirai had hoped. Many delegates were still afraid of human violence, even when facing the alternative of cybernetic slavery. But fear of the Vorthak won in the end. The motion passes by a margin of 7 votes, Speaker Veltara announced. The human containment protocols are hereby suspended pending resolution of the Vorthak crisis. Elder Mirai felt relief wash over her. It wasn't a complete victory. There would be restrictions and oversight, but it was enough. Human Forces Co. The stars around Nexus Prime vanished as the Vorthak fleet emerged from hyperspace. 10,000 ships of impossible size filled the viewports, blotting out the light of distant suns. At the center of the armada was the Convergence, a massive dreadnought the size of a small moon. Its hull was covered in weapon batteries and docking ports for smaller vessels. On the bridge of the Convergence, Prime Constructor Vexthul surveyed the galaxy's capital through cybernetic eyes. The station was beautiful in its own way, a fusion of technologies from dozens of species working together. Soon all that diversity would be absorbed into the Vorthak collective. Begin the integration protocol, Vexthul ordered in the mechanical voice shared by all Vorthak leadership. Transmit surrender demands to the Council. The message that reached Nexus Prime was simple and terrifying. Surrender all organic life forms for immediate integration into the Vorthak collective. Resistance will result in total destruction followed by forced conversion of survivors. You have 1 galactic standard hour to comply. In the council chambers, panic spread like wildfire. Delegates who had spent decades debating minor trade disputes now faced the end of everything they knew. Some called for immediate surrender. Others demanded evacuation. A few suggested negotiation. Elder Mirai stood at the emergency command center that had been hastily set up in the council building. Around her, officers from a dozen species tried to coordinate the defense of their civilization. It should have been impossible. Too many languages, too many different military traditions, too many old rivalries. But Admiral Boram had arrived 3 days earlier with the Terran Defense Force, and she had worked a miracle. Somehow she had gotten the various alien fleets to work together under human tactical command. It wasn't perfect coordination, but it was better than chaos. Fleet status report, the Admiral requested. Captain J. Wan looked up from his display. We have approximately 2,000 ships of all classes. Zelithan fast attack craft, Althorian energy projectors, Kregan assault vessels, and our own fleet, against 10,000 Vorthak ships. The numbers were devastating. Even with the element of surprise, the galactic forces were outnumbered 5-1. But Admiral Boram had spent her life studying military history, and she knew that numbers weren't everything. They expect us to fight defensively, she said to her staff. Station defenses, layered formations, gradual retreat. That's how every other species has fought them. What do you suggest instead? Asked Commander Gayun, who led the fighter squadrons. We do what humans do best. We improvise. Fleet Admiral Sung Ho joined the briefing via hologram from his flagship. He had arrived just hours earlier with additional human reinforcements, officially on a training exercise that happened to coincide with the Vorthak attack. Admiral Boram, my ships are in position. What are your orders? We're going to hit them where they don't expect it, Boram replied. The Convergence is their command ship. If we can take it out, the rest of their fleet will lose coordination. That ship is the size of a moon, Commander Gaun pointed out. How do we even get close to it? Dr. Yunji had been working frantically with Engineer So Young to adapt the Kalari frequency weapon for ship-based use. Now she stepped forward with a solution that was typically human in its audacity. We can't destroy the Convergence with conventional weapons, she admitted, but we don't need to destroy it. We just need to disrupt it long enough to cause chaos in their formation. She activated a holographic display showing the modified frequency generators that had been installed on several human ships. The Kalari taught us that their crystal technology can be used as a weapon. We've adapted their harmonic principles for our own purposes. Will it work on a ship that size? Admiral Boram asked. I don't know, Dr. Yunji replied honestly. We've never tested it against anything larger than a cruiser. But if we can get close enough and if we coordinate the frequency exactly right, we might be able to overload their cybernetic systems. It was a desperate plan with almost no chance of success. But as Admiral Boram looked around the room at the faces of her officers, she saw the same determination that had carried humanity through countless impossible wars. We'll need a diversion, she said finally. Something to draw their attention while we position the frequency ships. Captain Deho, still recovering from his injuries but refusing to stay in the medical bay, volunteered immediately. The Indomitable is still operational. We can lead the main attack. Your ship is held together with hull patches and prayer, Admiral Boram pointed out. Perfect. They'll never expect a damaged ship to lead an assault. The plan was insane, which made it perfectly human. While the main fleet engaged the Vorthak forces in a conventional battle, a small group of ships equipped with frequency weapons would attempt to reach the Convergence. They would have one chance to disrupt the enemy command structure. As the human forces prepared for battle, the other species watched with a mixture of admiration and terror. The humans showed no fear, only grim determination. They joked with each other as they prepared their weapons, sang old songs from Earth, and made promises to fight until the end. Harmonist Shimara had come to Nexus Prime with a group of Kalari volunteers. Their planet had been saved by human sacrifice, and now they wanted to return the favor. They had spent days learning to coordinate their harmonic abilities with human technology. We do not understand your way of fighting, she told Dr. Yunji as they made final preparations. But we understand your way of loving. You fight for strangers as if they were family. The battle began when the Vorthak fleet moved into attack formation. Their ships advanced in perfect coordination, weapons charging for a devastating first strike. They expected the galactic forces to meet them with defensive formations and careful tactics. Instead, Captain Deho led the human fleet in a headlong charge directly at the enemy center. The Indomitable, still scarred from the battle at Sanctuary, fired everything it had while streaming atmosphere from a dozen hull breaches. The Vorthak were caught off guard by the sheer audacity of the attack. Their tactical computers had calculated thousands of possible scenarios, but none of them included a damaged ship leading a suicidal charge. Commander Ga Yun followed with her fighter squadrons, diving through the gaps in the Vorthak formation like hawks attacking a flock of geese. Her pilots used every trick in the book, spinning attacks, impossible turns, coordinated strikes that seemed to come from nowhere. Pilot Na Yun led her squadron in a maneuver that would have been impossible for any other species. They flew in formation so tight that their ships were almost touching, presenting a single target to enemy sensors. But at the last moment, they scattered in all directions, confusing the Vorthak targeting systems. The alien fleets followed the human lead, abandoning their careful formations for aggressive attacks. Silithan ships used their superior speed to hit and run. Althorian vessels focused their energy projectors on single targets, overwhelming shields through brute force. Even the usually cautious Kregan clans fought with unprecedented fury, but the real plan was happening in the chaos of battle. Admiral Boram led a small group of ships on a seemingly random course through the battlefield. To Vorthak sensors, they appeared to be damaged vessels retreating from combat. In reality, they were the frequency ships making their approach to the convergence. Engineer So Young monitored the harmonic generators as they approached the massive dreadnought. The ship was so large that it had its own gravity field, pulling space debris into orbit around its hull. "Frequency generators are charging," she reported. "We need to get within 10 kilometers for maximum effect." 10 kilometers? Admiral Boram looked at the tactical display in disbelief. "That thing will swat us like flies before we get that close." "Not if we're very lucky and very fast," Dr. Yunji replied. The frequency ships accelerated toward the convergence, using every stealth system they had. Somehow, they made it to the outer defense perimeter before being detected. Alarms began blaring throughout the Vorthak fleet as they realized what was happening. Prime Constructor Vexthul watched the approaching ships with electronic confusion. "Why do they approach our primary vessel? Do they intend to ram us?" "Unknown," reported Subprime Kex 4. "Their course is erratic. They may be attempting some form of suicide attack." The Convergence's defensive weapons opened fire, sending streams of energy toward the human ships. Most of the shots missed. The human pilots were flying in patterns that defied logic, changing course seemingly at random. But 2 ships were hit and destroyed in brilliant explosions. The remaining vessels pressed on, their crews knowing that millions of lives depended on their success. At 5 kilometers from the target, Dr. Yunji activated the frequency generators. The harmonic resonance that had saved Sanctuary now reached out toward the massive Vorthak ship, seeking the cybernetic systems that controlled its operations. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Throughout the convergence, cybernetic implants began to malfunction. Vorthak crew members collapsed as their artificial components sent feedback through their nervous systems. Secondary explosions erupted as overloaded systems failed throughout the ship. Prime Constructor Vexthul felt the frequency attack through his own enhanced systems.